In a remote military outpost on Earth, Captain Adam Hayes stared at the screens in front of him, a strange pattern flickering across the radar. He leaned in closer, adjusting the controls, but the image remained the same. A signal unlike anything he had ever seen before. It wasn't random static or interference. This was something deliberate, something intelligent. "Sir, we've got something," the technician beside him called out, his voice tense. "It's not from Earth." Hayes glanced over at the technician. The signal's pattern was unlike any earthly communication systems had ever used. It was complex and repeating, with bursts of energy that seemed almost like a code. Hayes ran a hand through his short, dark hair. "It's a message," Hayes muttered under his breath. "Someone's trying to reach us." The outpost had been set up for routine military exercises, testing new equipment, running drills, and making sure Earth's defense systems were ready for anything. But this signal was different. It wasn't a typical military transmission. No, it felt like an invitation, a plea. And it was coming from somewhere out there, far beyond the edge of known space. "Should we alert higher command, Captain?" the technician asked, still staring at the screen. Captain Hayes nodded slowly. "Yes, but I want to take a look at this first." He studied the signal, his mind racing. The pattern was sophisticated, unlike any natural phenomenon. It was too precise to be random. If this was a message, it was one designed by an intelligent species. Just as he was about to contact command, another message blinked across the screen. It was a reply, seemingly a continuation of the first pattern. Hayes felt a shiver run down his spine. The signal was growing stronger, clearer, as if the alien species on the other end was aware of his presence. This wasn't just an ordinary signal. This was the start of something unprecedented. The captain glanced over at his team. Most of them were still at their stations, monitoring the usual military feeds. But there was one person, a young officer named Rachel, who had been unusually quiet as she watched the signal unfold. "It's almost like it's waiting for something," Rachel said softly, her eyes wide. Hayes turned to her. "What do you mean?" "It's like it's responding to us," she explained, her voice calm but filled with wonder. "Like it's reaching out, asking for something." Hayes was quiet for a moment. This wasn't just an alien signal. This was a call for help. The patterns had changed again, and now there were distinct pauses in between the bursts of energy. It was almost as if the alien was waiting for an answer. "Sir, what should we do?" Rachel asked, her voice tinged with curiosity and concern. Hayes didn't hesitate. He knew what he had to do. "Prepare the team. We're going to investigate this signal. I want to know what's on the other side." The other soldiers in the room glanced at each other, their eyes filled with confusion and concern. But Hayes' tone was firm, and they could see the determination in his eyes. They had faced countless military missions together, but this was different. This wasn't just about Earth's safety. This was something bigger. In the days that followed, Hayes coordinated with the military command, trying to piece together a plan for investigating the alien signal. But as the hours passed, he found himself becoming more and more obsessed with the idea of reaching out to whoever was behind the message. He felt a strange pull, a sense of responsibility. What if this was a peaceful species in need of help? What if Earth could make contact and form an alliance, opening the door to unimaginable possibilities? It was easy to think of the unknown as a threat. After all, there had been countless stories throughout history of alien invasions and conflicts. But Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. The signal didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a lifeline. He spent countless hours in the control room, analyzing the signal and deciphering the patterns. Little by little, he began to understand the structure of the communication. It wasn't just a random collection of energy pulses. It was a complex, intelligent message. And it was clear that the alien on the other side was trying to communicate, trying to make contact. With every passing day, the signal grew stronger, more urgent. Hayes knew that time was running out. The longer they waited, the less chance they had of truly understanding the message. This could be their only opportunity to make contact, to connect with an alien species for the first time in history. "Captain, we're ready," Rachel said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. She had been working with the communication systems, ensuring they were ready to send a reply. Hayes nodded. It was time. He could feel it deep in his gut. This was no longer just a mission. This was a chance to change the course of history. "Send the reply," he said. With that, the signal from Earth was sent out into the vast unknown, hoping to reach the alien species that had called out to them. What would happen next? Would this be the start of a new chapter in humanity's history? Or would it be the beginning of a new kind of danger? Hayes couldn't know yet, but he was ready to find out. Captain Adam Hayes had always been a man of action, but standing on the rocky surface of an unknown planet, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to do something that would change everything. The landscape stretched out in front of him, dusty, barren ground, with distant mountains and strange, jagged rock formations. The air was thin and dry, carrying a faint metallic smell. It wasn't a place meant for humans, but Hayes didn't mind. His eyes were focused on something far more important than the planet's inhospitable environment. Standing a few dozen feet away was the reason for their mission. A towering figure, unlike anything Hayes had ever seen. The alien was nearly 10 feet tall, its body covered in thick, tough-looking armor that shimmered under the weak light of the planet's distant sun. The creature's skin was a deep, iridescent blue that seemed to glow faintly in the dim atmosphere. It had 4 arms, each longer than a human's body, and sharp, angular features that made it look both majestic and intimidating. Its eyes, however, were what struck Hayes the most. They were enormous and black, with a strange, intelligent gleam, almost like the creature was waiting for him to make the first move. The soldiers around Hayes shifted nervously, eyes darting to the alien and back to their captain. Their hands gripped their weapons, ready to react at the slightest provocation. They were trained for hostile encounters, and yet this wasn't like anything they'd ever trained for. It wasn't just a threat. It was something far more unknown, more complex. "Captain, are you sure this is a good idea?" One of the soldiers, Private Daniels, asked quietly, his voice laced with uncertainty. He kept his finger near the trigger of his rifle, his eyes flicking nervously from the alien to Hayes. Hayes turned to him and gave a quick, reassuring nod. "We don't know what it wants, but we can't assume it's a threat without understanding it first. Stay alert, but don't fire unless I say so." He turned his attention back to the alien, his heart racing in his chest. The creature had not moved since they landed. It stood still, watching them with an eerie calmness, as if it had been expecting their arrival. It was waiting for something, waiting for him, perhaps. Hayes took a deep breath and took a step forward, his boots crunching softly against the rocky ground. His decision was clear. He would be the one to make contact. Despite the anxiety creeping up on him, he felt a strange sense of determination. It was one thing to send out a message into the unknown, but it was another to stand face to face with the unknown and make a choice to bridge the gap between species. The alien's eyes never left him as he approached. Hayes stopped about 5 feet away, just out of arm's reach. The towering figure did not flinch or move, but it tilted its head slightly, almost as if studying him. Hayes could feel the weight of the creature's gaze pressing into him, trying to understand him as much as he was trying to understand it. "Hello," Hayes said carefully, his voice calm but firm. It felt strange to speak aloud to an alien species, but it was the only way he knew how to start. The words seemed so small in comparison to the vast unknown before him. The alien's mouth moved slightly, but there was no sound. Hayes frowned, unsure if it was trying to speak or if something had gone wrong with its communication system. He took another cautious step forward, feeling the tension in the air thickening. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the space around them, and the alien's body shimmered. Hayes could feel a strange vibration in the air, like the alien was radiating energy. He instinctively took a step back, but the alien did not seem to be threatening him. Instead, it raised one of its four arms slowly and pointed toward Hayes, then toward the horizon behind him. Hayes squinted, trying to make sense of the gesture. The alien wasn't speaking, but its actions seemed to hold meaning. The creature's arm was long and slender, with thick fingers that seemed capable of immense strength. When it pointed to the horizon, Hayes followed its gaze. In the distance, he could just make out the outlines of a strange structure, partially hidden behind the rocky hills. Could it be a base, or some sort of shelter? The thought crossed his mind, and he turned back to the alien. "Are you showing me something?" Hayes asked, his voice a little shaky now. He didn't know why, but he felt that the alien was trying to communicate without words. It wasn't a hostile gesture, but a deliberate one. The alien's eyes glowed even brighter for a moment, and it nodded slowly. Hayes wasn't sure if it understood his words or if it had simply sensed his question. It was as if the creature could read his thoughts, or at least his intentions. "I understand," Hayes said, speaking more to himself than to the alien. "You need help." The alien made no sound, but its posture shifted slightly, its body language softening. Hayes felt a surge of hope. This wasn't just an enemy. This was a being in need of something he might be able to provide. He took another step forward, raising his hand in a gesture of peace. "I'm here to help," he said, his voice steady now. "We can help you." The alien's eyes seemed to focus more intently on Hayes, as if weighing his words carefully. For a moment, everything was still, the only sound being the wind sweeping across the barren landscape. Then, slowly, the alien lowered its arm and gave a slight nod. It was a start, a fragile, uncertain start. But for the first time since their arrival, Hayes felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could make contact with a species not bent on destruction, but on survival. The alien turned and began walking toward the distant structure, its massive frame moving with surprising grace. Hayes watched it go, knowing that this was only the beginning. What lay ahead was still unknown, but one thing was clear. The universe had just become a whole lot bigger. Captain Hayes and his team followed the alien across the rocky, desolate terrain, their boots crunching against the ground as they made their way toward the distant structure. The alien moved with ease, its large frame gliding silently through the air, as if it knew exactly where it was going. The soldiers trailed behind, their eyes constantly scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger, but Hayes kept his focus on the towering creature ahead of him. The sun was dim, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The rocky hills around them seemed to close in, making the air feel even thinner. There was a strange energy in the atmosphere, almost as if the planet itself was alive, watching them. The structure the alien had pointed them to wasn't a base, like Hayes had thought. It wasn't military or technological at all. As they approached, the team began to realize that it was far older, ancient even. It was a temple, its walls covered in strange symbols that no one could decipher. The stones that made up the structure were weathered by time, with moss and vines creeping up the sides. Yet, despite its age, the temple stood strong, as if it had been built to last for eons. "What is this place?" Private Daniels whispered, his voice full of awe as he looked at the ancient building. "I don't know," Hayes replied, his gaze fixed on the temple. He could feel the weight of history in the air, as if this place held secrets that had been forgotten for centuries. "But it's important." The alien stopped at the entrance, turning to face the humans for the first time since they had started walking. Its large, dark eyes met Hayes's, and for a moment, it seemed to be waiting for something. Hayes stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment when they would learn what the alien needed. The creature raised one of its massive arms and gestured toward the temple entrance. Without a word, it stepped aside, allowing Hayes and his team to enter first. The air inside was cool, carrying the faint scent of stone, and something else, Something ancient, as if this place had been untouched for a long time. Hayes felt a shiver run down his spine, but he didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, leading the way into the darkened hall. Inside, the temple was vast. The walls stretched up high, and the ceiling seemed to disappear into shadows. Strange carvings decorated every surface, intricate designs that Hayes could not recognize. The floor was uneven, with stone tiles worn smooth by centuries of use. It felt like they were walking into a place lost in time, a place that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations long before humans ever set foot on this planet. As they moved deeper into the temple, they came across a large chamber at the center. The room was dominated by a massive stone altar, covered in more of the same strange symbols. At the far end of the room, a large, glowing crystal was embedded in the wall. The crystal pulsed with a soft, blue light, casting an eerie glow across the room. The alien approached the altar and turned to face the humans. It raised its hand again, this time pointing at the crystal. Hayes could sense that this was the key, the heart of the temple. Whatever this alien needed, it was connected to the glowing crystal. "What is this?" Hayes asked, his voice echoing in the chamber. The alien tilted its head, as if trying to understand the question. After a long pause, it raised its arm and pointed to its chest, then to the crystal. Hayes frowned, trying to make sense of the gesture. Was it saying that the crystal was connected to its life force, or was it asking for help to activate it? Before he could ask further, the alien stepped forward and placed its hand on the crystal. Immediately, the room seemed to vibrate with energy. The air grew heavy, and the soft hum of the crystal grew louder, filling the chamber with a deep, resonating sound. Hayes could feel the power radiating from the crystal, and he instinctively took a step back. His soldiers did the same, unsure of what was happening. The alien's eyes closed, and it seemed to be concentrating, its body rigid as it focused on the crystal. The glowing light from the crystal intensified, bathing the room in a brilliant blue glow. For a moment, everything was still. Then, suddenly, the alien let out a low, guttural sound, like a deep growl, and the crystal flared with even greater intensity. The ground beneath their feet shook, and the walls of the temple seemed to tremble. Hayes could hear the sound of something ancient, something powerful, coming to life deep within the temple. The alien withdrew its hand from the crystal, and the light from the crystal began to fade, though it still pulsed softly. The shaking stopped, and the room fell into an eerie silence. The alien turned to face Hayes, its large black eyes full of emotion, fear, hope, and something else. It was as if the alien had just unlocked a piece of its past, a key to its survival. "Captain, what just happened?" Private Daniels asked, his voice tense. Hayes didn't have an answer. He looked at the alien, who had turned to face him again. The creature's expression was unreadable, but its stance was different now, more relaxed, less guarded. It seemed to have let go of something, like a burden had been lifted. "I think it's asking for help," Hayes said, his voice quiet, as the weight of the moment settled on him. "It needs something from us, but I'm not sure what yet." The alien stepped back, slowly retreating toward the far side of the room. It glanced back at Hayes, then nodded once before turning toward a set of doors at the back of the chamber. Without a word, it pushed them open and disappeared inside. Hayes stood there for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. The alien had communicated with the crystal, activated something within the temple, and now it was leaving. But where was it going? And what had it just revealed? His mind raced with questions, but one thing was clear. Whatever the alien had uncovered was important, and it was only the beginning of their journey into the unknown. The doors to the back chamber closed with a deep, echoing thud as the alien disappeared into the darkness. Captain Hayes stood frozen, still processing everything that had just happened. The alien's actions were unlike anything he had ever encountered. The way it had connected with the crystal, the way it had seemed to unlock something ancient, It was clear that this wasn't just an ordinary encounter. The stakes were higher now. Much higher. "Captain, what's going on?" Private Daniels asked, his voice filled with confusion. He stepped closer to Hayes, his eyes searching the room for answers. "I don't know, Daniels," Hayes replied, his voice low and steady. He turned to face his team, who were all waiting, eyes filled with questions and uncertainty. "But I'm sure of one thing. We've just stumbled onto something bigger than we can imagine." Hayes glanced around at the temple once more. The carvings on the walls seemed to pulse with a faint energy, as though they were alive with meaning, waiting for someone to uncover them. The soft hum of the crystal still filled the room, its light dim but constant, as if it was still resonating from whatever power the alien had awakened. The team stood in silence for a moment, each of them taking in the scene around them. Finally, Hayes gave a sharp nod and gestured to the soldiers. "Let's move in. Stay alert," he ordered. The soldiers moved into action, carefully stepping through the chamber and approaching the now dim crystal. Hayes lingered for a moment, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering something extraordinary and possibly dangerous. He knew that whatever the alien had just activated was important. They needed to find out more. The creature might have just unlocked the key to understanding this entire planet, its purpose, and why it was drawing them here. Hayes had a sense that the alien wasn't just looking for help. It was trying to fulfill a mission of its own, one that had been waiting for a long time. As they moved deeper into the temple, they reached the set of doors the alien had disappeared through. The doors were old, their edges worn from centuries of use, but they were still intact, standing strong as though they had been designed to withstand the test of time. Hayes reached out and pushed the doors open, revealing a narrow hallway that descended deeper into the ground. The air was colder here, and the faint smell of dust and stone filled their noses. The hallway seemed endless, stretching far beyond what the eye could see. The walls were covered in more of the same strange symbols, intricate designs that Hayes couldn't make sense of. The path ahead was lit only by the soft glow of the crystal, which still pulsed faintly from the room behind them. Hayes motioned for his team to follow. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they made their way down the corridor. The atmosphere felt heavier here, as though the very ground they were walking on held secrets that had been buried for a reason. Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that they were treading on sacred ground. After what felt like an eternity, the hallway finally opened up into another chamber. This one was even larger than the last, with high ceilings that seemed to stretch toward infinity. In the center of the room was a massive structure, an intricate, ancient machine of sorts, with glowing lines running through its surface. The lines pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, similar to the energy coming from the crystal in the previous room. At the far end of the chamber stood the alien. It had not turned back to look at them, but Hayes could see that it was focused on the machine, its large hands running over its surface as if trying to unlock its secrets. "Captain, what is this place?" Sergeant McConnell asked, his voice hushed in awe. "I don't know," Hayes said, his voice tense with the realization that they were standing on the edge of something much bigger than they had imagined. "But I think we're about to find out." He took a step forward, signaling his team to stay close. As they approached the alien, Hayes could feel a shift in the air, an energy, almost like the hum of the crystal, radiating from the machine. It was a power unlike anything he had ever experienced, something ancient, and something that held the potential to change everything. The alien turned toward them then, its black eyes meeting Hayes. It didn't speak, but the look in its eyes told Hayes everything he needed to know. The creature had been waiting for them. It had been waiting for someone to help it complete its mission, someone who could unlock the full power of the machine. Hayes swallowed hard, stepping closer to the alien. "What is this?" he asked again, this time his voice carrying a sense of urgency. The alien's hand moved slowly toward the machine's glowing surface, and the lines of energy began to intensify, glowing brighter as it made contact. The alien's eyes closed for a moment, and when they opened again, they were filled with something new: determination. It turned back to Hayes and finally spoke, its voice low and strange, like a deep rumbling hum. "It is a key," the alien said, its voice filled with weight. "A key to the stars. A key to our survival." The words sent a chill through Hayes. He felt the gravity of what the alien was saying. This machine, this structure, was far more than a simple artifact. It was a beacon, a bridge to something greater. But what was it leading to? Survival. From what? Hayes asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien's gaze softened. It looked at Hayes with an expression of quiet urgency. "The stars are not safe, but with the key, we can unlock a path to safety, to a future." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Hayes felt the weight of the alien's words, and the path before him became clearer, but at the same time, more uncertain. The alien was asking for help, but it was more than just help. It was a partnership. The future of both their species might depend on it. Captain Hayes stood motionless, absorbing the weight of the alien's words. The room, filled with the soft hum of the machine and the pulse of the glowing lines, seemed to close in around him. The alien, still standing near the intricate structure, waited patiently. Its dark eyes never left him, as if it was gauging his reaction, wondering if he understood the significance of what it had just said. "Key to the stars," Hayes murmured under his breath, his mind racing. What could the alien mean by that? Was this machine truly a gateway to something beyond their understanding? Something that could save both their species? Survival? Private Daniels asked, stepping forward cautiously. His voice echoed through the large chamber, breaking the silence. "What do you mean by that? What's out there that's so dangerous?" The alien's gaze shifted toward Daniels for a brief moment before it spoke, its voice low and rumbling. "There are forces beyond your comprehension, human. They are coming. They have always been coming." The words sent a chill down Hayes' spine. A part of him wanted to ask more questions, to probe deeper into the alien's cryptic statement, but he knew there wasn't time for that. If this machine really was a key, then their next move was more important than ever. "Captain," Sergeant McConnell spoke up, his tone sharp. "Do you think this machine can really help us? Or is this some kind of trap?" Hayes turned to McConnell, considering his words carefully. It wasn't like him to rush into anything without thinking it through. But this situation was different. This wasn't just about them anymore. The alien was right about one thing. There was something out there. Something dangerous. And if they didn't act fast, they could all be in grave danger. "I don't know," Hayes replied, his voice steady. "But we don't have the luxury of waiting. Whatever's coming, we need to be ready." He turned back to the alien, meeting its gaze. The creature stood still, as if it was waiting for them to make the first move. It was clear to Hayes that it trusted him, or at least it hoped that he could help in some way. The alien raised a hand and motioned toward the machine, its fingers tracing the glowing lines that crisscrossed its surface. With each movement, the lights pulsed brighter, and Hayes could feel a surge of energy in the air. It was almost as if the machine was alive, responding to the alien's touch. Hayes stepped closer, motioning for his team to follow. The alien stepped aside, allowing them to approach the machine. The surface of the structure was smooth and cold, but there was an undeniable power radiating from it. Hayes hesitated for a moment, then placed his hand on the machine. As soon as his hand made contact, the energy in the room intensified. The lights flared up, and the hum of the machine grew louder. A strange feeling washed over him, a mixture of awe and fear. He wasn't sure if it was the machine itself or the alien's presence, but he could feel something unlocking within him, a connection to something far greater than himself. "Captain." Daniels's voice broke through the strange sensation. Hayes looked up and saw his team watching him, their faces filled with a mix of confusion and curiosity. Hayes swallowed hard. He didn't know if he was ready for what came next, but there was no turning back now. He had to push forward. They all had to. "I think we've just activated something," Hayes said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind. "But I don't know what it is yet. We need to figure this out. Together." The alien nodded, its expression unreadable. It took a step back, as if giving them space to explore further. The pulsing lights on the machine began to slow, and a deep, resonant sound filled the air, like a distant rumble. It wasn't threatening, but it was unmistakably powerful. Without warning, the floor beneath them began to shift. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, the ground trembled as if some vast force was awakening deep within the planet. Hayes felt the vibrations under his feet, and he saw the walls of the chamber shake slightly. It wasn't just the machine. Something was happening, something that could change everything. "Captain," McConnell called, his voice tinged with urgency. "What's going on? Is this part of the plan?" Hayes didn't have an answer. All he could do was watch as the alien began to move, its hands raised, as if controlling the energy. The ground beneath them shook harder now, and the lights from the machine blazed brighter than ever before. "It's starting," the alien said, its voice strangely calm amidst the chaos. "The path is opening." The air around them seemed to warp as the energy intensified. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from the center of the machine, engulfing the entire room. Hayes felt a pull, an overwhelming force drawing him toward the light. He reached out instinctively, but before he could react, the light exploded outward, filling the chamber with blinding brightness. Everything went silent. For a brief moment, there was nothing but a void. No sound, no movement, just the sensation of floating in darkness. Then, slowly, the world returned. The light faded, and the trembling stopped. Hayes blinked, trying to make sense of what had just happened. They were no longer in the chamber. The entire landscape had changed. Before them stood a vast, alien world, a place unlike anything Hayes had ever seen. The sky was dark, swirling with energy, and towering structures of unfamiliar design loomed in the distance. It was a place of mystery and danger, and it was clear that the machine had done its job. It had transported them to a new world. "Where are we?" Daniels whispered, his voice filled with awe. The alien turned to them, its dark eyes filled with something that resembled hope. "This is the key," it said, its voice steady. "Welcome to the beginning of your new future." But Hayes knew that this was only the beginning. They had unlocked something powerful, something dangerous, and whatever came next, they would face it together. The strange new world stretched out before them, an alien landscape full of towering structures and unrecognizable vegetation. The sky swirled with deep shades of purple and blue, flickering with flashes of light that looked like distant stars caught in a storm. It was like nothing Hayes had ever seen, yet there was a familiar sense of tension in the air. They weren't just visitors here. They had just stepped into something that was far more than they could have imagined. Captain Hayes, Private Daniels, and Sergeant McConnell stood at the edge of a large plateau, gazing at the alien city in the distance. The alien, their guide and companion, stood motionless next to them, its dark eyes scanning the horizon. This is where it begins?" Hayes asked, his voice low, filled with awe. The alien nodded, its head tilting slightly as it spoke. "Yes, human. This is the heart of the Old Ones. The path you have opened will lead you to what you seek, but it is not without danger. There are forces here, both ancient and powerful, forces that you will have to face." Hayes turned to face his team, his expression serious. There was no turning back now. Whatever danger lay ahead, they had to face it head-on. He could see the doubt in his team's eyes, but there was also something else, curiosity, the same curiosity that had led them here in the first place. "Captain," McConnell spoke up, breaking the silence. "Are we sure about this? We don't know what we're walking into. This place, it doesn't look safe." "I know," Hayes said, his voice firm. "But we don't have a choice. The mission is clear. We find out what's going on here, and we figure out how to stop whatever is coming." The alien trusted us with this. We can't turn back. Daniels, who had been quiet up until now, finally spoke. And what about the alien? Can we really trust it? The alien turned its dark eyes toward Daniels, its gaze calm. I have no intention to deceive you, human. My species and yours have been at odds for a long time. But I believe this is a path we must walk together. Hayes glanced back at the alien, considering its words carefully. He had no reason to believe the creature was lying. If it wanted to harm them, it could have done so already. They were in its domain now, and it was guiding them to the unknown, just as it had promised. All right, Hayes said after a pause. We move forward, but we stay alert. Everyone stay close, and don't trust anything we don't understand. With that, they began their journey toward the city. As they moved, the air around them seemed to grow heavier. It wasn't just the physical weight of the atmosphere, but the sensation of something ancient, something forgotten, pressing against their minds. The alien world felt alive with secrets, and it was clear that they were only scratching the surface. After walking for hours, they reached the base of a massive tower, easily over 100 feet tall, made of smooth black stone that seemed to shimmer under the strange light of the sky. The tower had no visible doors, no windows, nothing to indicate what lay inside. It was simply a monolith, standing like a silent sentinel, watching over them. This is it, the alien said, its voice echoing slightly in the silence. The gateway. Hayes looked up at the towering structure, his pulse quickening. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to enter something that would change everything. He motioned for his team to follow him as they approached the base of the tower. As they drew closer, a low hum filled the air, resonating from the very ground beneath their feet. The alien moved forward first, its hand outstretched toward the smooth surface of the stone. To Hayes' surprise, the stone seemed to shift under its touch, creating a pathway that led them inside. The group stepped cautiously into the opening, and the world outside was suddenly swallowed by shadows. Inside, the air was cool, filled with the scent of something ancient. The walls of the tower were lined with glowing symbols, symbols that shifted and pulsed with an energy that was both comforting and terrifying. This is where it happens, the alien said, turning to face them. The energy you seek is inside. The path will reveal itself when you are ready. Hayes' mind raced. What was this place? What was the purpose of these strange markings? And how was he supposed to know when they were ready? He didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear. The next step was crucial. This wasn't just a mission. This was their last hope. Suddenly, the floor beneath them began to rumble. The walls of the tower shook slightly, and the symbols on the walls flared to life, casting the chamber in an eerie light. The alien didn't flinch. It stood still, waiting. Hayes could feel the intensity of the energy building around them, the air thick with power. This is it, the alien said again, its voice calm but urgent. The key is within reach. But be warned, human. The forces that guard this power will not yield easily. The tension in the room grew, and for a moment, it seemed like time itself had stopped. Hayes could feel his heartbeat in his chest, thumping loudly as the energy around him grew stronger. They were on the edge of something massive, something that would define their future. And it was up to him, and his team, to take the final step. Are you ready? The alien asked, its voice steady as it turned to face them. Hayes nodded. We're ready. With that, the ground beneath them shifted, and the world around them began to change. The journey to uncover the secrets of this alien world had just begun, and the challenges ahead would test everything they had ever known. But Captain Hayes knew one thing for sure. They were not alone, and together, they would face whatever came next. The air around them vibrated with a powerful hum, the sound of ancient forces awakening. The chamber, once filled with shadows and dim light, now blazed with energy. The symbols on the walls shimmered, pulsing like living creatures, their light casting strange, shifting shadows across the group. Captain Hayes stood still, his eyes scanning the room, his heart racing with a mixture of fear and excitement. This was the moment they had come all this way for. The alien had promised them the answers they sought, but what were those answers? What was waiting for them behind the mysteries of this alien world? "Captain," McConnell whispered, his voice tinged with uncertainty. This feels wrong. Like we're being watched." Hayes nodded, his instincts telling him the same thing. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke them. It felt as if something unseen was observing their every move, waiting to see if they were worthy of what lay ahead. He could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on them, but they had come too far to turn back now. "We keep moving," Hayes said quietly, turning to his team. "Stay sharp. Whatever happens, we're in this together." The alien, standing motionless beside them, nodded in silent agreement. It had led them here, and Hayes trusted it, though trust in the unknown was a dangerous thing. With a steady breath, Hayes stepped forward, his boots echoing in the vast, empty space. As he approached the center of the room, the ground beneath his feet began to shift, sliding open to reveal a circular platform of glowing stone. It hummed with energy, and an ancient symbol appeared in the center, glowing brightly. Hayes felt an overwhelming pull, as if the symbol was calling to him. He could feel the weight of history in this place, as if the very foundation of the galaxy was somehow tied to what they were about to discover. "Step onto the platform," the alien said in a low, calm voice. "Only then will you understand." Hayes hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He stepped onto the platform, followed by his team. As soon as their feet touched the glowing stone, the entire chamber seemed to come alive. The symbols on the walls burst into brilliant light, and the air crackled with energy. The floor beneath them shifted once more, and a holographic map appeared in the air before them, filled with complex patterns and swirling lines. "This is the map of the old ones," the alien explained, its voice echoing in the vast space. "They built this place to protect the knowledge of the universe. The path you have chosen will lead to a power beyond imagination." Hayes stared at the map, his eyes scanning the intricate designs. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before, far beyond the understanding of his own civilization. The lines on the map twisted and moved, forming new paths and connections before his eyes. It was as if the map was alive, constantly shifting, adapting to the actions of those who gazed upon it. "This is impossible," Daniels murmured, her voice filled with awe. "How is this even possible? This technology, it's beyond anything we can comprehend." The alien's expression was unreadable as it spoke. "This is the legacy of the old ones. They were beings of incredible intelligence and power. They saw the future, and they built this place to ensure that their knowledge would survive. But they made one mistake." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "What mistake?" "They trusted the wrong people," the alien said, its voice darkening. "They believed that their power would be used for good, but they were betrayed, and their creations were lost." The ground beneath them trembled as if reacting to the alien's words. Hayes could feel the weight of its revelation settle on him. The old ones had built something extraordinary, but it had been destroyed by those who had misused its power. Now it was up to them to restore that balance, to use the knowledge they had found to prevent the same mistake from happening again. The map in front of them shifted again, revealing a distant star system. It glowed brightly, surrounded by swirling clouds of gas and dust. Hayes felt a pull toward it, a sense of urgency. This was the key. This was where the power they sought was hidden. "This is it," Hayes said, his voice firm. "This is where we need to go." The alien nodded. "Yes, the power you seek is there, but be warned. It is guarded by forces beyond your understanding. Forces that will stop at nothing to prevent you from reaching it." Hayes turned to his team, his eyes hard with resolve. "We've come this far. We don't stop now. We'll face whatever challenges come our way." As the map slowly faded, a new path began to form before them, a path leading directly to the star system they had just seen. The air around them hummed with energy, and the ground shifted again, opening a doorway to the next phase of their journey. "Captain," McConnell said, his voice filled with determination. "We're ready." Hayes nodded. "Then let's finish this, together." The team stepped forward, walking into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. They had made it this far, and they would not turn back. The path to the future was in their hands, and it was up to them to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. They were humanity's last hope, and they would fight with everything they had to protect the galaxy from the darkness that threatened to consume it. And so, their journey continued into the heart of the unknown. The final revelation awaited them, and with it, the fate of the universe.